Cameras rise like a sea of judgment as chandeliers glitter over a marble ballroom. A millionaire just proposed a cruel condition that turns a black maid into a dare and love into a performance, turning a charity gala into a spectacle. Standing in her work shoes, surrounded by dresses and tuxedos, she is aware that one slip-up will validate all the rumors about where she belongs. She has learned to polish more than just floors, which nobody in this room is aware of. Another thing she has spent years honing is her timing, posture, and unwavering poise. The question is not whether she can dance when the music starts. The question is whether this space is prepared for what dignity looks like when it's in motion. The choreography of survival has been taught to Nia. Rise before the sun comes up, cross two buses, place a palm against the tall gate of the estate, as though it could sense her heartbeat, and then enter a world that was never intended for her. She recognizes every room by its echo and scent. The library exhales like ink and cedar. The sound of the east hallway is like wind caught in old frames. Her uniform tells everyone how to see her, so her reflection moves with a quiet grace that no one notices as she cleans in the ballroom on waxed marble. She had no intention of getting to know the millionaire's son. It occurred in small, everyday ways, like sharing a space without talking, finding stray pages of his notes near the staircase, or refilling water after long study nights. A house of rules with two people circling it. A steady respect, a recognition that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with their shared perspective of the world, not as it was, but as it could be, grew in the margins. Then, like perfume in a still room, a rumor spread. The father chose to make a point because he was fixated on his reputation. Gala for charity. Ideal stage. As part of the scene, the staff lined the walls and influential friends gathered like judges. As though a human life could be summed up in 3 counts and a final bow, he transformed a private tenderness into public entertainment by challenging Nia to prove herself with a waltz. Her right ankle ached, a relic from a past life she hardly ever talks about. The chamber awaited. The strings have been adjusted. She recalled the rhythm of home as she stood beneath a chandelier. Mirrors existed before uniforms. There was music, before there were whispers. Dancing served as a form of education and escape in the neighborhood where Nia grew up. Elders with resilience in their toes and histories on their shoulders taught her posture. She learned to hold the frame like a promise, firm, kind, and unwavering, from a coach in community centers and church basements. She gained knowledge of outside spin, heel, lead, and rise and fall. She also learned how to move shamelessly across floors that didn't always accept her. She was a competitor. She prevailed, not for cheers, but for the sense of purposeful muscle alignment. Her mother's illness, bills piling up like bricks, and a minor injury that required rest that she couldn't afford caused life to take a detour. Tucked away with pictures and a program from the night she won a city title, she folded the trophies into a cardboard box. Work called. Accountability took the lead. Dreams learned to wait. They did not die. Nia moved in the mansion like a dancer rehearsing behind closed doors. She counted beats in her mind as she folded napkins, pivoted as she wiped, and rotated when no one else was looking. This was hinted at by the millionaire's son, who identified a discipline that reflected his own. He appreciated her rhythm and the way she positioned herself as though boundaries were just blank canvases. The father viewed their intimacy as a stain to be cleaned off, rather than a relationship to comprehend when it eventually reached his ears. The orchestra's warm-up at the gala dissolved into a purposeful silence. The guests sat in a jury-like formation. A few grinned. Some appeared wary. Some turned away, not wanting to see what they thought would be a public humiliation. Employees, their hands folded around trays as though they were clinging to a mast in severe weather, watched with their own private prayers. The condition hung in the air, but it was never written down. It reduced heritage to one dance, love to spectacle, and personhood to performance. In order to relax tremors before a final round, Nia breathed in for 4 and out for 4. Every time talent was reframed as luck and effort as a favor. She felt the weight of every microaggression she had swallowed. The old fear lingered. Then something older spoke up. Unbreakable spine, discipline, memory. She took a step forward. The son offered his body, his eyes steady, his suit awkward. In ballroom, a partnership is a written agreement of equals. Share, center, share balance, and share intent. She agreed. Not because she agreed with the father's game, but because it gave her the opportunity to select her own words for the time being. A hand was raised by the conductor. The violins sang inaudibly. 1, 2, 3. Nia initially kept things straightforward. Closed change, natural turn, and another natural turn. She relaxed the room into a state of underestimation. She was passable, guests whispered, and a person like her would never be anything more than passable. Her breath remained steady as she heard it without actually hearing it. She then started writing a new story while shifting her weight through her standing leg. Sway unfolded like a curtain lifting as she introduced shaping. Her elbows were soft but powerful, and her top line was long. She exhibited a precise hesitation that stemmed from her control over time rather than uncertainty. With quiet, learned trust. The sun followed her center. Controlling a wave that turned space liquid, she anchored the rise just before the crest, making the subsequent fall feel forgiving. Gowns paused in the middle of a sip. A manager with a pile of plates froze in the doorway. Another maid, somewhere in the back, covered her mouth with her palm, her eyes threatening to burst into mascara. Tradition was nuanced by Nia. She infused the waltz's European roots with the nuanced pulse of her upbringing, a grounded truth in the float, a hint of syncopation in a pivot, not rebellion, incorporation, a thesis in motion about the consequences, of allowing cultures to communicate and rejecting the myth that excellence has a single accent. The father's mouth clenched. A red-blinked phone light was live-streaming an embarrassing moment that was now being turned into a masterclass. An usher attempted to advance but changed his mind. A reharmonized phrase that gave Nia an additional measure of sky was woven in by the conductor, who sensed the story. Unrepentant, accurate, and unrestrained, she took it and painted her name on it. She recalled a judge's raised brow softening into respect, a coach nodding after a clean heel pull, and her mother's hands correcting a wrist. After winning, she recalled riding the bus home while still wearing a dress from a thrift store, with strangers thinking she was the coat check girl. The coat check girl turned into a constellation tonight, every heartbeat synchronized with 1, 2, 3, as the room leaned closer, anticipating her next move. The stage evolved into a statement and the floor into a stage. Nia decelerated into a balance so silent it made noise, then accelerated into a controlled impetus. Head left, chin up, eyes level with the horizon, she led a promenade that was more about sovereignty than elegance. Understanding that true partnership is the art of support rather than the desire for attention, the sun matched without ego. Just when the room thought they had mapped her arc, she offered a moment of silence after curving into a double reverse spin with footwork so clean it could pass inspection by the most exacting adjudicator. The whole gala finally caught a glimpse of her in that silence. Not as employees, not as gossip, and not as bold. She spent her strength like a gift, having earned it all the hard way. Against the distant wall, a projector flickered. Quiet as a candle in a church, another staff member had queued up an old video that had been taken from the public page of a community center. Years ago, Nia was there, gathering a trophy in dimly lit conditions, her face bursting with joy and perspiration. It felt like a blessing to have the past and present superimposed. The father's scheme fell apart. Like confetti that he was unable to retrieve, control slipped from his grasp. From laughter to amazement to something more nuanced, accountability, the guests' faces changed. They discovered character and had come for charity. They were pleasantly surprised by the entertainment they had anticipated. Nia had never agreed to a deal, so she had no intention of winning one. Her goal was to be honest. She made one last pass, a slow-turning constellation of breath, sway, and rise, and ended with a level, quiet gaze that gave agency back to its rightful owner rather than a curtsy to the room. She took off her apron, carefully folded it, and placed it on a silver tray. It was a statement that dignity had never been the employer, not a resignation from it. The thunder of silence was louder than any cheers. After that, the first hands touched, hesitated, gathered, and then rushed into a standing ovation that acknowledged skill and, more importantly, the audacity of underestimating something that was being shattered right in front of everyone. The gala recalculated as the lights stabilized. After witnessing a spectacle, donors now saw a system. Employees who had anticipated embarrassment now saw a boundary redraw. The son moved to stand next to Nia, not to assert anything, but to show solidarity. Two individuals selecting one another based on their own terms, free from any agreement that attempted to use love as leverage. The father was left with a mirror that he was unable to dim. His home had recently hosted a public lecture on the price of pride, so he set up a charity to improve his reputation. The main focus of this story is not whether he changed instantly or by inches. The main idea is that a woman changed a room by refusing to let it determine her worth. The following day, calls came in from youth centers that remembered her, community arts programs, and a foundation director who had seen the stream and made the decision to provide scholarships for students in need of faith and floors. After accepting a job as a coach, Nia went on to become a director. She created a studio where a child who had been told that the world wasn't theirs could learn to move as though it always was, and where a waltz frame could straighten a person's spine. The estate eventually implemented trainings on respect and bias. That is important. More importantly, the staff started to stand a little taller, remembering that excellence is developed by the courageous rather than bestowed by the wealthy. The story of the gala spread throughout classrooms, barbershops, and break rooms, serving as a reminder that while humiliation can be planned, so can redemption. As evidence that permission was never needed, Nia kept the folded apron in a drawer, not as a memento of her time in slavery, but rather as a reminder of the day she danced without asking permission. An audience wasn't necessary for the life she and the son created. In order to remind students that respect is a rhythm and partnership is a practice, they occasionally stepped into the frame for a class when they visited her studio on Saturdays. Consider why your heart pounded when the music slowed and the room fell silent. Was it the realization that you have a floor of your own that you've been scared to walk on, or was it the shock of excellence from a person a system tried to hide? What would happen if we all decided to take the initiative to implement the next change in a society that constantly adds conditions to people's lives? Which waltz have you been told you don't belong in, and what will it take to take the floor in any case?